The courtroom was already charged before Marcus Elias Webb even took his seat. Word had spread overnight. A retired school teacher, 62 years old, tackled to the ground in his own front yard, pinned face down into the dirt he had spent 30 years maintaining, while a SWAT team with a murder warrant served the wrong address. And now the men responsible were sitting on the other side of this courtroom, polished and unbothered, as if the story ended the day they drove away. It did not end that day. Judge Patricia Fleischer entered the courtroom at precisely 9:14 in the morning, and the room shifted the way rooms do when someone genuinely dangerous to injustice walks through a door. She was 61, silver-haired, with the posture of someone who had never once slouched before an argument she respected. She set down her portfolio without rushing. She looked at both sides of the room with the flat, measuring patience of a woman who had seen every variety of lie, and she said nothing for 7 full seconds. Those 7 seconds felt like a verdict of their own. Marcus Webb sat at the plaintiff's table in a neatly pressed navy blazer, one size too large at the shoulders. The blazer a man wears to something important, not something he wears every day. His hands were folded on the table. His left wrist, wrapped in a compression bandage, was the only thing he offered as explanation for why he was here. He did not look angry. He looked tired in the specific way of someone who had been told repeatedly that what happened to him was a misunderstanding and had finally stopped believing it. On the other side of the room sat Deputy Director Aaron Chalmers and the city's lead counsel, Gerald Poole, in suits that cost more than Marcus Webb's monthly pension. Chalmers leaned back slightly in his chair, not dramatically, not enough to comment on, but enough. The posture of a man calculating rather than listening. If you have ever watched someone powerful assume, from the very first second, that a room belongs to them, leave a comment below, because every person watching this story is about to recognize exactly what that looks like and exactly what it costs. The city's position was procedural and clean on paper. The warrant had been issued for 4417 Carver Street. Marcus Webb lived at 4471 Carver Street, a transposed digit. An honest clerical error, they argued. The officers had acted in good faith. The tackle had been a safety protocol, not aggression. Mr. Webb had been uninjured, and here Gerald Poole gestured slightly toward the compression bandage, in any meaningful way. The city had already sent a letter of regret. A letter of regret. Judge Fleischer looked up from her notes at that phrase and wrote something down without commenting. That was the first moment the city's counsel should have felt afraid. He did not. Marcus Webb's attorney, a younger woman named Diana Chaby, who had taken the case pro bono, then began to enter evidence. And this is where the room started to change. The warrant error, she explained, was not discovered for 11 days. In those 11 days, Marcus Webb had been charged with obstruction for asking to see identification. That charge, obstruction, had been formally processed. It had been filed with the county. It had appeared on a background check run by the school district where Marcus Webb had volunteered as a reading tutor for 14 years. He had been quietly removed from the volunteer list. No call, an email 3 lines long. The courtroom shifted, not loudly, a shift in weight, in breath. Diana Chaby placed the background check document on the projector. Then she placed the removal email. Then she placed a second document, a formal report, internal, dated 3 days after the incident, in which a supervising officer noted that the address discrepancy had been identified within 45 minutes of the raid and had not been immediately escalated because, and the report used this exact language, the subject had been non-compliant. Non-compliant. A 62-year-old man, tackled on his own lawn, had asked to see a warrant. That was the non-compliance. The courtroom went silent. Deputy Director Chalmers leaned forward for the first time. He whispered something to Gerald Poole. Poole straightened his tie. Judge Fleischer said, with a voice like a door closing on an empty room, "Mr. Poole, your client's internal report was dated 3 days after the incident. The obstruction charge was filed on day 1. Help me understand the sequence." Poole began to explain that the two processes operated on separate tracks. They operated, Judge Fleischer said, on the same man. That was the line. That was the moment every person in that gallery stopped breathing for exactly 2 seconds. What followed was the monologue, unhurried, precise, devastating. Judge Fleischer looked directly at the city's table and said that what she had reviewed was not a clerical error followed by an apology. What she had reviewed was a pattern, an incident misclassified, a charge filed as protection, a correction suppressed, and a civilian's reputation harmed to reduce a department's liability. She said that the law did not exist to be administered in the order most convenient to those holding it. She said that the compression bandage on Marcus Webb's wrist was not a minor thing, and neither was the email that removed him from a school where children had learned to read because of him. She said, in closing, with the quietness of someone who never needs to raise their voice, that power exercised without accountability is not authority. It is just force. All charges against Marcus Webb were dismissed. The obstruction filing was ordered expunged. The city was directed to issue a formal correction to the school district. Chalmers' department was referred for a procedural audit. Marcus Webb did not cheer. He pressed both hands flat on the table, looked at them for a moment, and then nodded once to himself or to the 30 years of a life he had built quietly and nearly lost to a transposed digit and a decision to cover it rather than correct it. 3 weeks later, the school district reinstated him. The children in his Tuesday reading group made him a card. It had his name spelled out in colored letters, slightly uneven, the way children write the names of people they have been missing. Justice doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives in a letter of reinstatement. Sometimes it arrives in a judge's quiet sentence that the whole room will carry home. Sometimes it arrives in a card made by children who never stopped waiting. If this story stayed with you, share it. Someone in your life needs to see that quiet dignity, relentlessly defended, eventually wins. Like this video, subscribe if you're here for stories where the truth refuses to stay buried, and drop a comment telling me, what was the moment that changed everything for you? Because for me, it was a 7-second silence and a woman who never once raised her voice.